On this episode of FieldLink, we travel to Pennsylvania to visit with members of episode number 3 of the Innovation Never Stops series. Here we chat with fourth-generation farmer Ellie Barley from Star Rock Farms, and we discuss how Agri-Intelligence and the staff at Helena are helping her and her family prepare for the next generation of agriculture. Plus, Jody Lawrence joins us from Nashville to discuss the recent announcement of the USDA Farm Payment Program and the recent WASDE report. Stay tuned for this episode of FieldLink. Folks, if you enjoy the commodity insight from the FieldLink podcast, you can now get a daily deep dive delivered to your email and cell phone, as we're excited to introduce the FieldLink Market Report. The daily commentary will come to your inbox, and you can now take advantage of our text alert system where critical market insight will be delivered to you in this new format. If you've enjoyed getting the daily email in the past from Jody Lawrence directly, you'll love this new format that will be packed with commentaries, charts, and market insight that will be delivered in a very easy-to-read form. Go to helenaagra.com as the email and text alerts will be launched on November 10th. Be sure to sign up today so you never miss out on vital commodity news and information. While signing up, be sure to sign up for the FieldLink e-newsletter to gain valuable agronomic, finance, and product advice from the experts at Helena and others across the industry. It's all free, so be sure to register today so you never miss out. And welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith, and we're really excited to have some of our guests from our Pennsylvania shoot at Innovation Never Stops. Our guests and that were featured in that episode joining us today. Joining us from Star Rock Farms is Ellie Barley. Ellie, welcome to FieldLink.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Ellie, it's great to have you joining us here. We also have Josh Lapp, who's one of our Helena sales representatives, joining us, as well as Brooks Barefoot and Phil Sabowski. Guys, welcome to FieldLink.
Thanks for having us, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Hey, guys, I'll tell you what, we're super excited to see this episode roll out as it hit the airwaves. We've had great feedback across the country, learning more about agriculture in Pennsylvania. And Ellie, it was a great opportunity to, highlight your farm and your family operation. And we had a lot of fun doing that. Ellie, tell us a little bit more, as we step back after watching that video episode, tell us a little bit more about you as well as your family operation.
My family operation is Star Rock Farms. I'm the fourth generation within the business. So there's currently 7 of us total within the fourth generation currently in the business, along with 4 are generation 4 and 3 are generation 3. So definitely a big family business. We're in southern Pennsylvania in York and Lancaster counties, and we have a cropping business, corn, wheat, soybeans, dry hay, silage, rilage, and a couple odd things in between, depending on the year. We also have a dairy operation, a beef cattle operation, and a sow unit as well. And recently, we have expanded actually down into Virginia. So we are, we're working on transitioning our family business from ownership, we've also been expanding too, which is super exciting. So lots of moving pieces, lots of different things going on. So it definitely keeps things interesting.
Definitely a true definition of a diversified farm for sure.
Yeah. And I think the interesting piece when we were doing the filming for this episode, it's not very often that I feel like we sit back and actually reflect on what it is, all that we do, and all of us family that's involved. And then the team that we have that, works with us and for us that are not family members, and just how everything jives together. We don't sit back often and reflect on that. And that was something cool that I think my dad and I definitely did while we were shooting this episode. So kind of be like, wow, we've got a lot going on.
It's sometimes, a shoot like this can really make you sit back and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we were doing all these things like you pointed out. And it is kind of you get caught up in the whirlwind, don't you, in agriculture today, and especially when you're as diversified as y'all are.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Ellie, tell us a little bit about, okay, you're the fourth generation. That's huge. There's not many fourth generation operators rather, out there today. How did you happen to get interested in coming back to the farm?
Well, to be honest, that's kind of always what I've wanted to do. Growing up, I always went to work with my dad in between, obviously, school and stuff like that. But I always loved going to work with him. It's funny, like working with people who have known me since I've been a baby. There's this one lady who used to take me out to the combine in my car seat to ride with my dad. So I guess just exposure to it my entire life. I just always found myself reverting back to wanting to come back to the farm once I was at that age that I could. I deviated a little bit maybe and wanted to be a chef for a small period of time.
Really?
But but I always pretty much knew I wanted to come back to the farm and kind of follow in my dad's footsteps. And it's interesting because when I think back to when I was younger, what I thought that entailed versus as I've gotten older and learned that it's farming and it's business, it's morphed a lot into what I perceived it to be versus what it actually is. But yeah, I've just always had a love for it, and I think that comes a lot from you can tell my dad loves what he does too. Like it energizes him. He loves farming. He likes figuring out all the pieces and how to make things work. And honestly, I credit my passion for farming from my dad. So.
Well, that's awesome. So, growing up through high school, were you involved in other, in the farming operation? Were you involved in 4-H, for example, or anything along that line?
Yeah, I was in 4-H when I was younger. I showed dairy cows and also pigs as well. I liked it, but definitely made me realize that I'm more of a crop girl. I like equipment and that piece of farming versus the day-to-day with animals. But yeah, I grew up showing. I was in FFA through high school. And then I went to University of Delaware for an ag business and ag and natural resources degree. Was definitely involved in the ag industry there. I worked for a couple farmers while I was in Delaware. So that was definitely a good experience. Getting that off the family farm experience was really, really good for me. I actually still stay in touch with the main guy that I worked for in Delaware. I talked to him probably almost once a week, if not more. So that was really neat.
It's sometimes really good to get, I guess, a different perspective like you had in Delaware with a different family farm operation. And maybe they do things a little bit differently. And maybe you can bring some of those ideas back or vice versa too, correct?
He has a custom application business. And so that was just a different side of things that I don't see day to day here at the farm. So just getting that different perspective on inputs and, dealing with customers, because they're obviously a very customer based business. So definitely got a lot of different perspectives working for a different part of the ag industry.
No, that's really awesome. Okay, so you mentioned on their farm there's 7 family members directly involved today.
Yep, 7 of us, 4 in my generation and 3 in what we call Generation 3, G3.
Ellie, how do you guys break up the business? Is there, one person, hey, you're in charge of the cattle, you're in charge of the crops? How's it organized?
Well, I think if you ask any family business, family farming business, I think that's kind of the question that we're always trying to figure out, because it is tricky to kind of get clear cut lines in an industry and in a business as diversified as we are. When I'm fairly young, I'm 28, and the rest of my generation is fairly young too. So we're trying to learn the business while also work day to day in the operations. And as you learn, you kind of figure out where your role is, and it just takes some time. But the other 3 members in my generation, my cousins, we kind of all, for the most part, have definitely followed the interest of what our fathers were involved in. So that kind of helped differentiate out day to day what part of the business we work in. But then, of course, there's the collective whole of, we're all owners, and where do we want to push the business as a whole forward to?
Sure. Well, Ellie, tell me a little bit about your relationship with Helena. How did you guys get started, and walk me through that journey there?
Yeah, so we got started with Helena, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago at this point. And that was honestly before I was super involved in a lot of these decision making processes when it comes to where we're getting our inputs from, and how we're working the agronomy system. So my dad was a big role in that, and it pretty much stemmed off of basically having service issues with our previous supplier, and looking for someone who better fit our needs. And Helena came to the table and put some information out there, and we decided to roll forward with them on certain things. And from there kind of started to get our foot in a little bit more, and get our foot in a little bit more as we were seeing that we were super satisfied with not only the products and their performance, but also the service that we were getting from Helena. And it's kind of accumulated into where we're at now with having a pretty in-depth program as a whole with Helena.
Well, that's an awesome journey there. I'm going to weave in Josh Lab. Josh, sales rep out there in Pennsylvania, working with Ellie and her team. Josh, walk us through a little bit about the journey. I know Agri-Intelligence was a really important part of some of the services that Ellie pointed out. How'd you guys get started?
Yeah, Bill. So I actually, when I first got to know the people at Star Rock, I was actually in an agri-intelligence role. And so I was the AI tech at the time. So a lot of our relationship was built, I think, off of focusing on the agronomy side and through the agri-intelligence platform. So that's how I got to know Ellie and some of the people at Star Rock really well. And it's morphed from there into kind of a all-encompassing portfolio of products, and we kind of are working with them really as a partner in a lot of different ways there.
Josh, what were some of the things when you were working in agri-intelligence with Ellie and her family at Star Rock Farms? What were some of the things that agri-intelligence really kind of uncovered that maybe raised that aha moment? We can help you out here. What were some of the maybe deficiencies that you were able to point out?
Yeah, so I think as a whole, they were doing a really good job with their fertility. They do such a good job at managing and focusing on the needs. I think what agri-intelligence brought to the table for them is kind of combining all the different data points, whether it's yield, whether it's soil. And so kind of to make better informed decisions on, what inputs, where to spend those inputs at. We did a lot of stuff with analyzing yield data and creating variable rate fertility recs, seeding recs, things like that, that I think kind of changed, the way they looked at things from an input side, and how can we basically maximize acres. They farm a really diverse acre base. There's so much variability in the acres that they're farming, and so figuring out how to maximize the fertility investments and things like that, I think, kind of what made a difference there.
No, that's really awesome. And Ellie, I imagine, with the wide range of operations, covering a couple of states between Virginia and Pennsylvania, of course, you have a lot of diversity in those fields, and they're all very different, especially in that geography. So each field probably has its own challenges. Is that right?
Yeah, we definitely, the area we farm both in Pennsylvania and Virginia, they almost have their own little like micro environments based off of their geography. And it like Josh was saying, it is very variable, and trying to figure out how to manage that at the scale we're at and still do it efficiently is hard to do. And I felt like the agri-intelligence program really allowed us to kind of take that next step to be able to do that while still maintaining the efficiency of how we need to run, just to honestly simply get the job done in a timely manner. So that's been something that has been really game changing for us.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I can imagine lots of different variability when you're covering that big of a region, right? You cover a lot of miles there, and all those fields are a little bit different.
Yeah, and I would even argue too that it honestly allowed us to understand these microenvironments even better because of the soil data we're getting back, and how we're able to see it compiled in a usable format to be able to make decisions off of. So even just the learning we've had on our ground that, we already knew, we kind of took a little bit more of a deeper dive on it with the information we've been able to get.
It's really amazing as technology advances. We tend to learn more and more and more about the same soil that we've been really farming for 4 generations, but the data really helps us better understand what's really going on in that microclimate, like you'd mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So, Ellie, we talk a lot about diversification, but boy, you've really become diversified in your operation. Tell us a little bit about your farm to table operation.
Yeah, so we started selling our beef products direct to consumer, and that is definitely a different market compared to the wholesale market that we've been used to our entire, existence as Star Rock Farms. So it definitely was a slow start, but we've gained a lot of traction. We work with a couple local restaurants and businesses and actually other butcher shops selling our products direct to consumer. And it's been really neat to see our products out in the local community and be able to go get, our steaks at a local restaurant. So that's been something that we have slowly started to diversify in. And I think is something that's setting us up for maybe one day being able to package our own dairy products or do something of that nature at some point.
It's certainly a huge market that's expanding, especially after COVID, to have some of these niche supplies. We've learned as a nation that we can't just rely on 3 or 4 major suppliers from a beef processing, that these smaller operations are very vital. And there's a huge consumer market out there for those products.
Yeah, there definitely is. It's so many people always ask, like, where can we get your beef? Where can we get your beef? And, up until a couple of years ago, you couldn't really get it anywhere. So now it's neat to be able to bridge that and connect that, because it really gives you the ability to connect with the community. And we definitely are in a very small town area in southern Pennsylvania, and people really value knowing where their food comes. I mean, I do. I value knowing where my food comes from. So it's cool to be able to be in that part now.
Ellie, with your beef products, and are you marketing them online as well, or is it just in local, markets or local restaurants?
Yeah, so we're in local restaurants, but we've also started to grow our social media presence with Facebook and Instagram. So that's been a particularly fun side for me to kind of start to put my hands into, that networking world of things and being able to, craft and show what we do from a side of obviously promoting beef sales, but just more so getting knowledge out there as to what we do as farmers, because I think that's just as important to help educate the community on what we're doing, why they're seeing big equipment go down the road, why they're seeing manure being spread on fields. So it kind of goes hand in hand to tie all those pieces together to help grow that consumer knowledge.
So, Ellie, where can our listeners from around the world learn more about Star Rock Farms on your social media platform?
So you can follow us on Instagram at Star Rock Farms, as well as Facebook. And we also have a website, starrockfarms.com.
Awesome. And they have the ability to reach out to you and find out where some of the beef's available. Is that correct there?
Yep. Yeah, you can find a direct link to our storefront on our website. And you can always shoot us a message if you're interested.
Awesome. And you're going to be moving in potentially to the dairy side of things in the future. Is that right?
Yeah, hopefully. I think that's something that my generation really has, our eye on trying to figure that out, because honestly, who wouldn't want to develop ice cream flavors and be able to eat ice cream that comes from the cows you milk? So stay tuned for that. No promises, but stay tuned.
Well, there's certainly there's a lot of chatter in the country and on the media today about, milk becoming even more important product than it's ever been with the MAHA movement. Vitamin D is back in the front line, and good wholesome milk is certainly becoming more and more a part of the average American consumer's diet, more so than really, quite frankly, in the last 30 years. So, Ellie, sounds like a great time to get back into that side of the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of potential, I feel like.
So I'm going to pull in Phil Sabowski. Phil, one of the products that has been adopted into that fertility program with Ellie and Josh in Star Rock Farms has been research and as well as Hydrohume. Phil, tell us a little bit about that product and how has that helped influence some differentiation in that particular operation?
I think one of the biggest things that Hydrohume and research does is it helps you with your fertilizer efficiency. So as everybody knows, farmers are spending a lot of money on their fertilizer, right? And trying to make that fertilizer as efficient as possible, whether it's making sure that your phosphorus doesn't get tied up or making phosphorus available in the soil or helping with volatility with nitrogen and leaching with nitrogen. Basically trying to protect that fertilizer in all different aspects is something that humic acids like research and Hydrohume are doing. And yeah, just protecting your investment that you're putting out in the field. And as we all know, weather is something that changes every single year. It could be super dry, it can be super wet, and having something out there that can protect that fertilizer in all sorts of different conditions is really important to do.
Yeah, definitely a huge advantage there. And Ellie, efficiency is the name of the game, isn't it? I mean, it is the name of the game for producers today.
Yeah, I mean, my dad always says timing is everything. So if you're not timely, you can really kick yourself for it down the road when you're running that combine through the field. So yeah, timing is everything.
Yeah, I'm going to pull in Brooks Barefoot. Brooks, tell us a little bit more about Resurge. It's a newer product that's recently been added to our portfolio to help out with this fertilizer efficiency. What are some of the highlights around Resurge?
Resurge it's our next generation humic, and when you look at our portfolio, we have a couple different options when it comes to the humic molecules, whether it's liquid or dry, and those are really based on or made for application. So when you look at Resurge, it's a dry product that's designed to go in with your dry fertilizer blends, and also in with applications through like air seeders. Humic acid, it has a lot of different benefits, whether you're looking at water holding capacity, your microbial activity, and helping to boost and stimulate what's already present in the soil. But really, Phil hit it earlier, one of the things that we're really chasing is our nutrient holding capacity. And when you look at a humic molecule, it has a lot of positive and negative charges. So it has a lot of contact points. So when we're going out with whether it's dry or liquid fertilizer, we're able to apply these materials to it to help form that attraction, keep that nutrient available so it doesn't get bound up in the soil. And then at the same time, humics work really good to help kind of claw off what's already present. Like if you have real high phosphorus levels, it'll help to mine what's already available for the plant to take it in.
And I think it's really important, and that's exciting news about research and having that capabilities. But a term that's thrown around a lot in the industry today is humics, and not all humics are created equal, are they, Brooks? There's a lot of difference in humic technology.
That's correct. A lot of it really comes back to the source. All of our humic products are mined out of New Mexico, and there's a lot of quality control that goes into it. It has to meet a certain spec on activity. You go to digging into a humic seam, and you go too far down, and you got coal. And it's the same color, it looks the same, but it doesn't act the same. So there's only a few, there's a number of places where humics are mined between, in Canada and throughout America. But a lot of ours, what makes ours unique is truly having a good active source. And then the way we preserve it as well. We don't heat it, we don't bake it. It's all naturally cured, so that once it's applied, it's active and ready to go.
Yeah, efficiency is definitely the model, and sourcing is really the key with research as well as Hydrohume. Josh, what are some of your other customers talking about research and Hydrohume? How's that working for them in your market?
Yeah, I think the one thing that's a little more unique for our market is the amount of manure that we have. And even with Star Rock, I mean, they have a beef, swine, dairy operation. So there's a lot of different ways to utilize that, but with that comes some challenges as far as, nutrient tie-up, availability, and just how we're maximizing, even just that application. So one thing that humics have allowed us to do is try and find ways that we can utilize humics to release some of that phosphorus, for instance, and things like that. So we're trying some different things there, as far as adding it to manure and things like that. But that's something that's been big for our geography when it comes to humics and just overall nutrient availability.
In LA, nutrient efficiency, but nutrient management has got to be a key topic for you. It is for most growers, especially that are dealing with livestock. What are some of the challenges that you're faced with from a nutrient management and manure management standpoint on your farm?
Yeah, well, we have manure and it's something we have to deal with, and there's not an option to not. So it's trying to manage where that manure is going so we don't drive nutrient levels through the roof. And then, like they were saying, trying to figure out what we can be doing and applying to help unlock that nutrients that has been banked in there from years and years of applications, how we can unlock that and make that useful. That way we're taking the manure where it needs to go from a soil sample standpoint, but then being able to use what's already there. So it's a dance year to year to get it figured out. And especially, when you talk about a year where we have excess rain and our pits are not covered and we accumulate all that rainfall, sometimes we get into pinches where we need to move manure because there's a big storm coming. So trying to make all that jive while also doing what is best from a fertility standpoint is super important, because we have the access to free nutrients in our manure. We want to utilize it in the best way possible. But then also, like I said, how do we get that stuff unlocked to be able to use?
It's really your word dance. And I think that's so true for a lot of livestock producers. It's the dance and the art, combination of the art and the science of how do I manage my manure and turn it into something extremely efficient for my row crop operation.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's a lot of value in the manure, but if you put it somewhere where the soil doesn't need it, essentially becomes valueless in a sense. So making sure that it goes to the right spots, and we're trying to figure out how to get the banked nutrients out of the other acres is kind of a big point for us, big challenge.
And Josh, I guess that's really where Agri-Intelligence comes into play in terms of helping out Ellie help manage some of that fertility because of the wide, diverse opportunity with manure.
Yeah, I think when an operation like Star Rock with that many moving parts and different, manure resources or access to that manure, there's a lot of different things that go into building fertility recs. Me and Ellie have spent hours upon hours on figuring out, what to credit for manure applications here. So, how much potash or nitrogen do we need over here after an application? So there's a lot that goes into it. And they do an amazing job at, trying to maximize that and using Agri-Intelligence for it.
Awesome partnership there. Ellie, fourth generation operation. What does the future look like for Star Rock Farms? Where do you see this operation expanding to in the future?
I see the future as, honestly, I feel like there's a whole lot of untapped potential for things we can keep fine tuning to remain progressive and remain, competitive and viable in the ever-changing ag industry through just continuing to dive into how can we be working to do the best thing from a fertility standpoint, from a nutrient management standpoint, and really trying to maximize our acre to stay relevant, because you need to these days with how the ag commodity markets are. So I see the future as very bright, and I think that also is due to the G3, the generation that we have, here working side by side with us and being able to learn alongside them. That's a huge advantage that not all family businesses get the opportunity to work with, the senior generation, even though they'll probably get upset with me for calling them the senior generation. But, we have that to be able to work side by side and gain their industry and experience while also kind of carving a path of innovation to make the two mesh and, hopefully get some gains along the way and So yeah, I think the future is bright.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think it's so true when you can bring that many generations together and lean on those experiences and good times and bad. And what can we learn from them and how can we grow and become better? Diversification has been a big part of Star Rock Farms. Do you see your operation continuing to diversify in the future?
Yeah, I do. That's something I'll give Generation 3 a lot of credit. They were never afraid to take on a new opportunity, think outside of the box, or, branch out into a different part of the ag world. And I mean, we saw that with expanding down into Virginia. We're in the sod industry down there now, and that's something that, we were not used to up here in Pennsylvania. So I see that we will definitely continue to diversify. And I also feel like you have to diversify in the ag industry now in order to weather the storms and the ag cycle.
I'm sure you're kind of feeling that right now as we look at, commodity prices aren't really where we want them, but being able to navigate maybe some of that grain to your livestock side of your business, that's certainly got to help out a little bit.
Yeah, it does. This time of the year, we spend a lot of time planning for what we're doing in 2026. And I think that's something that people don't always realize farmers do, is they spend just as much time planning as they are in the field. I mean, those plans are what sets you up for, the upcoming year. And granted, weather can roll in and change all of that. But if you don't have that solid plan, you kind of start to fly by the seat of your pants. So
the old saying goes, fail to plan to fail. And it sounds like the folks at Star Rock Farms are doing a really wonderful job of planning, especially for Plant 26. Ellie Barley, Star Rock Farms, I want to thank you for joining us here on FieldLink, and the folks from Helena, Josh Lapp, Brooks Barefoot, Phil Saboski, want to thank you all for joining us here and making Innovation Never Stops series, our video series, such a success. Thanks for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink. And welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith. Hey, and on this episode, we've got Jody Lawrence joining us from the FieldLink Market Report. Jody, you're on the road today. Where are we at?
We are in Ottawa, Illinois, doing some meetings for both wholesale, retail customers, and going to get out just in time before it goes to zero on Friday night. So I am glad to be here, but I'll be glad to get back to somewhat tropical Nashville, where it's only going to be 45 degrees.
Yeah, you're going to get out of the tundra and get down to where it's a little bit warmer. Hey, Jody, we got a lot of news happening this week. We had some announcements by the Trump administration, the Department of Agriculture. Hey, we're going to have some payments coming our way here soon. Jody, what's the latest?
Yeah, the big thing really, there were several weekend kind of announcements. USDA, they came from Treasury Secretary Bessent, from President Trump, from USDA Secretary Rollins. But the big one, and we'll kind of work our way backwards so we don't bury the lead here, is that the Farm Bridge Payment Act, I guess is what you want to call it, what they're referring to it. Those payments have been decided. They came out today as far as what you're going to get per acre and other things. The checks are going to be hopefully out to everybody by February so that you can clean up your 2025 books and with your lenders, be in a good position for prepay to get everything set for the 26 crop year. And in those, this is something that check, do your own research. Don't just count on what we're saying here as the gospel on this. But for all our cotton guys, the payment estimate per acre is going to be $80 to $90. And the way they set this up is the best I could understand it, is they came up with what a cost of production is minus what basically the tariff and trade war piled on to already kind of flat to low price levels. So they're calling this, and all of these for corn, beans, wheat, and cotton, a 26% of the negative margin. For cotton, expect to be paid $80 to $90 an acre. And on all of this, there is going to be a cap per farm or per individual entity, I guess. So if you have already done all your CPAs taking care of you and your attorneys, that you have multiple entities, that should work in your favor. But 155,000 is going to be the cap per entity. And then you've got some adjusted gross income and a lot of other things that go into this. So this isn't just I'll just wait and get my check. I'm sure it's right. Make sure you get your team working on this to find out the best way to have this come to you. On the other payments for corn, it's going to be in the $45 to $55 an acre range. For beans, $25 to $35. That number, considering that beans were, were the whole leverage in all of the trade deals, seems low to me, but that's the number they came up with. While wheat, on the other hand, is going to be $60 to $70. If you just look at corn, beans, wheat, and cotton, that's going to be 7.5. That's $9.5 billion of the entire $11 billion that's going to be paid out from the Farm Bridge Payment Program.
Wow. So that was a total was around $12 billion. Is that still accurate?
Yes. Yeah. The total of the all-encompassing program was going to be right at 12.
And some of the produce guys, as I understand it, had a tick up on that. And that's kind of referencing wasn't that about $1 billion to $2 billion in produce proceeds?
It was, I don't know exactly how the number, the 9.5 up to the 12, where that $2.5 billion got spread out. But it's certainly, when you start talking about a lot of, the other industries that need it as well, produce being a big one.
Yeah. I know in the media early on, it was talked, more about the row crops. Clearly, that took a big chunk, but some other crops are certainly impacted with this payout.
It's going to be a big deal. And I think that there's a good part to this, is that everybody's going to be made whole from some, being a hostage in a negotiation situation, basically. And that we're going to be, at least made whole, or almost as whole as they can make us from that. But the bad side of it is that the U.S. farmer and the farm economy are always going to be a target for trade, for when they start talking about, the cost of food is too high for inflation. You just look at what they're trying to do with cattle and some other things. So it's, are we farming for the government? Unfortunately, yes. For another year, we are. But, we'll see where this goes. If this is going to be an ongoing, because this is the, second or third consecutive years of about a $12 billion payout. And this goes all the way back to 2019 during the initial Trump kind of phase one trade war, that this is I really feel like this is going to be more the rule than the exception as we move forward in agriculture, at least while these oversupplies around the world are in place. And there is one more thing I want to say, because this is going to be the key part, and at least give everybody some direction. The how to apply part of this is automatic for most via existing FSA records, but verify and update your 2025 acreage reports by December 19th. Today is the 9th, so that's 10 days.
Wow. At
local FSA offices or farmers.gov. No separate sign-up is needed, but contact farmerbridge@usda.gov for questions. Again, that's farmerbridge, all one word, @usda.gov for any questions that you've got. So hopefully I know this will come out in a couple days, but I'm going to put this in the newsletter to make sure that everybody knows where to go to get this started, because you certainly don't want to miss out on those payouts per acre, because I don't think anybody's in a position that they can just walk away from it and say, I don't need it after the last couple years.
Yep, definitely some action has to be taken at the farm gate by producers out there to, ensure that they're getting those payments in a timely manner. So December 19th, the big trigger date there. Definitely got to take an action to do so. So good news there coming to the producers around Christmas time. Jody, I think actual payout, when growers can expect to receive those payments. Any news up when they'll actually receive those payments?
The timeline that I saw is that they want everything done by the end of February. So obviously they need everybody to get signed up as soon as possible. And it's just like getting an income tax refund. The sooner you sign up, more than likely, the sooner your check's going to get to you. So this is something that time is of the essence in this, especially when you start talking about 10 days. I know that a lot of these records will be available through your crop insurance person. So use your entire team here to make sure you've got all the correct numbers, that there aren't any forms that you have to go back and file again because of, some small clerical error. This is one of those things you want to dot your I's and cross your T's to make sure that it's right and everything's coming your way that you deserve in this.
Well, certainly these payments are going to help out. They're somewhat timely, as growers get ready to, plant 26. And really that's what the intention is, to help us, get through to the next year, to farm another year successfully. And as we think about that, Jody, we got to think about demand. Demand is critical through this whole process. And speaking of demand, today the WASDE report came out. How are we looking here in terms of global supplies?
Well, there were two parts of the WASDE report that were, I guess, worth noting. We'll put it that way. The biggest one was that they did raise total corn exports about 150 million bushels. So that obviously raises total demand. So it's great to see that Mexico being our biggest buyer of, over 1 billion bushels of corn, and that ethanol demand has stayed strong along with those exports, that we are seeing a lot of support under the corn market, because we have had what would amount to a completely stagnant corn market, where the December contract was between 430 and 440 on the futures for a really long period of time. And now we're hovering on the March between 440 and 450. And you look out to the December of 26 new crop, that demand is apparent out there, because while we have better prices than we did at this time last year, everybody knows that 465 futures is not an area where everybody's making money hand over fist unless they get a lot extra yield coming out of that acre. So the report, for the most part, was a non-event. Outside, it was good to see the corn demand pop up a little bit. What they did tell us that is going to be an ongoing issue, and we've talked about this for, ever since we started the podcast and before, that you look at what Argentina and Brazil are expected to produce. They're going to produce over 8 billion bushels of beans. And in the January report, the USDA is probably going to say that the U.S. produced about 4.2, maybe 4.3 billion bushels of beans. So this is the time of the year when South America's bean crop is in the field, when problems could occur, that you have to start marketing your beans. Because when we are that far behind, we are, you think about in a 100-lap race, if we're 50 laps in, we're already 25 laps behind on what they produce above us every year. We have to sell our beans when prices rally due to a South American event. And unfortunately, that window with that number is closing, because they've got almost ideal weather. They have a lot of positives. They have the 2.5% acreage expansion, all of the things that go into them, again, producing an 8 billion bushel crop are in place. So we've got to look at the prices. This can't be I'm not comfortable selling anything until I know how my crop looks in late July or early August, because by then all the cards have been played in the hand and nobody's going to know unless we have a really bad
Right.
weather issue. So we've got the production. And again, like we've said the last couple of years, this is just an unbelievable accomplishment for the industry, from everybody, all the scientists that work to produce the new genetics, to all the farmers who are using improved practices and better stewardship to coax those bushels out. We're producing at an historic level to the size of the demand and the size of the population. And unfortunately, right now, demand is flat, but the yield keeps increasing enough to where we have these excess bushels.
Yeah, we definitely got to find a home for this, and creating new demands and new uses is absolutely important moving forward, not just for U.S. production, but for global production.
Yeah, and there was one other thing that came out this weekend. It was an interesting weekend of unusual or ag news, where it's coming out from, at least, because President Trump has promised that they are looking in, and who they are, probably the usual suspects, the trade, Jameson Greer, and you look at Ag Secretary Rollins and everybody involved, that they are looking into stopping the price fixing that they believe is occurring inside the input market for farmers. Now, I'm not sure what they can do about the high price of land and about the high price of rents, but there was a particularly specific tweet directed at John Deere, which I'm sure John Deere, I forgot to look see what the stock did today, but it couldn't have been good. But he's also talking about all the input side, the big basics, whether we're getting them from China or from the Middle East or wherever we're getting them from, that he believes there's a little bit of manipulation in these markets. That I'm curious to see what they come up with, and if anything comes out of it, because easiest way to make more money is have your cost of your inputs go down pretty sharply, and it'd be a great thing to see. But I'm not sure how he's going to be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what plays out of that. Scratch my head a little bit on that one, but again, I think we need to put our energy into new market development in order to find a home for the growing yield that both science and production is doing across the world.
The ethanol is doing all it can. The sustainable aviation fuel continues to have that potential, but has, to a certain extent, kind of put in alternative energy purgatory under this administration and under Energy Secretary Zeldin. So, it's time for all of our lobbyists and all of the people who advocate for ag in Washington and all over the country to come out and say, we can solve this problem pretty quickly if we get, let's come up with these programs and get X amount of demand that we keep domestically. And we certainly could see it turn a lot faster than one would expect.
Jody, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of FieldLink. And folks, if you're interested in this kind of information, go to helenaagri.com, sign up for the FieldLink Market Report so you can get a daily update from Jody on email, and be sure to sign up for his text messages so you can be alerted whenever the market takes a major move, and he'll give you a text update, all on the FieldLink Market Report. Jody, thanks for joining us from Illinois today.
Well, thank you, Bill. And in case we don't get one out before Christmas, Merry Christmas to everybody, and have a great holiday season. And we're going to come in swinging for a big 2026 in the podcast and in the markets.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of FieldLink. Be sure to check out the entire video series of The Innovation Never Stops at helenaagra.com.